Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. And my name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and we are back with some more predictions, and this time we're doing a lot all at once. Just like when Dune pushed to 2024, we're cramming in all of these craft categories into one episode.
Below the line.
And below the line stuff. We got it all here, and yeah, we missed the November date, but we're here early December. You definitely want to subscribe to the channel because coming out soon, we have our final Globes predictions, final Critics' Choice predictions, and our December Best Picture update. A lot of stuff that you don't want to miss. But what has changed since the last time that we talked about predictions? Well, we have some awards bodies that announced. Maybe not a lot that really pertains to these categories, but some small overlap shows some love for some movies and not as much love for other movies. So the Gotham's announced, and yeah, not much correlation to here, but Past Lives did win picture, struggled elsewhere. Is Past Lives a craft contender? No, but something to keep in mind for above the line. But something that does pertain to crafts and below the line categories is the New York Film Critics Circle, because they do have some of these awards.
Yes, and the New York Film Critics Circle, overall, they went with Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer pretty overwhelmingly. They gave Killers of the Flower Moon Best Picture and Best Actress for Lily Gladstone. They gave Oppenheimer Best Director, Best Cinematography. And, they also really seemed to love May December, which got Screenplay and Supporting Actor for Charles Melton.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. That's some more stuff that we're going to dive into our future episodes. So again, a little self-promo, self-plug, subscribe, like, helps us out, stays you connected. Let's dive into some of these predictions, though. Cinematography, something that New York Film Critics Circle went with Oppenheimer. But does Matt have Oppenheimer at number one?
Maybe I'm hope dicting at this point. I don't want Oppenheimer to win cinematography, and I think it's going to keep racking up those critics awards. It has been racking up those critics awards, but I have not seen a more creatively shot movie than Poor Things in years. If something like Poor Things can't win best cinematography, I don't know what can. Yes, Hoyt van Hoytema did create a new black and white IMAX film for this. But maybe this is me showing my ignorance. How hard can it be to make film black and white? How hard can it be?
I guess how hard can it be is no one's done it before, and it's 2023.
Because no one's wanted to. No one's had a reason to shoot a black and white IMAX film until Christopher Nolan was like, what if we did it? So all of that, I think this is a false narrative. I do not see Oppenheimer keeping it up through the industry awards. This, to me, it feels like Top Gun Maverick again, where, that started winning critics awards in cinematography. And I went, that doesn't feel right. There's something about that's wrong. And then something about that was wrong. It didn't even get nominated. Now, I do think Oppenheimer will get nominated. It would be a crazy thing if it missed the nomination, but I don't think it's going to be the undeniable winner that some people think it's going to be at this point for cinematography, at least. So yeah, I'm going with Poor Things. And if it's not Poor Things and it's not Oppenheimer, I'd say it's Maestro, which I've heard, I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard that it is stunning. Poor Things has black and white too. It's got some black and white in there too. Yeah, I think this top three is pretty locked in, and they are all win competitive. I just personally want to give the edge to Poor Things because of the use of so many different formats, the changing of lenses, the way that it flows effortlessly between mediums is gorgeous. But yeah, this top three is so solid. After that, though, my next three are all fighting for these final two spots, and I know what I would like to miss. If we're going for these five, I would like Killers of the Flower Moon to miss. I don't think it looks very good. I think the lighting of this movie is quite flat's the wrong word. It's not flat lighting. It just everything looks gray in this film. There's a few good shots, such as, looking at the fire through the frosted glass. Gorgeous shot. Otherwise, I find Killers of the Flower Moon to be quite an ugly looking movie. At number 5, there's The Color Purple, cinematography by Dan Laustsen, who also did John Wick Chapter 4 this year. And the thing about Color Purple is he's using his typical style that he's gotten nominated for in the past for The Shape of Water, and he's bringing it into a whole new genre, into the musical genre. The way his camera floats through each scene is really magical, and the lighting is gorgeous. A lot of just golden rays of sun coming through in every shot. That to me feels very strong for a nomination. Now, and what could replace it or Killers of the Flower Moon? Well, Zone of Interest. Zone of Interest is a compellingly shot film. It's not one that I think looks great. It looks like security camera footage the entire time, but it is unique. It is different. It is honestly really innovative. And the innovation that Oppenheimer is claiming to have, I think, is actually here in the Zone of Interest. I don't think it looks great, but it might be the kind of thing that this branch just goes for. So that's my top 6 right now. I don't know what else could really make it. You'll see down below, I've got Saltburn here, which it looks pretty, but like it's just,
It doesn't.
I don't know. I think it looks pretty. I think you're wrong. I
It just
do
looks
think
boring.
disagree, but what it does look like is kind of it looks like 2012 Instagram shots with Instagram filters. You know, that's kind of the vibe that the whole movie gives me is Instagram. There's also Napoleon, which looks pretty great, but it's Napoleon. It's kind of it's kind of dead all across the board. There's also
I
Society
disagree.
of the Snow. You don't think Napoleon's dead?
Not across
It's
the
dead.
board. Maybe it's
It's
cinematography, but
dead.
not across the board. Costumes,
It is
sound, visual
dead.
effects.
Napoleon's dead. I mean, visual effects, it's in the race. Costumes is too stacked. We'll talk about that later. Sound, I think it's too stacked. I think Napoleon's dead. I'm going to be completely honest. There's also Society of the Snow, which we haven't really seen the full potential of Society of the Snow. If this does well at the BAFTAs, we should watch out for it here. But really, this, I think it's a race between the top 7, I'd say here. And Saltburn is like a far down wild card.
I think it's the top 6 here, and you may be happy to hear that I do have Killers in the Flower Moon on the outside looking in, but I disagree with what you say about it looking bad. I just think that Killers is not going to be the nomination leader, and for it to not be the nomination leader, it needs to miss stuff along the line. As for Poor Things, Oppenheimer, Maestro, I do believe it's Oppenheimer, Poor Things 1 and 2. The order, that's up for debate. I think Maestro's third. Don't think Maestro has a shot to win, but it's firmly in for a nomination. Color Purple seems like when you watch it, like, yeah, this is nomination, but like you said, it's the late breaker. Maybe it can't hit everywhere that it needs to. I still think this is a shoo-in for ASC, for a BAFTA, and that will be enough to get the nomination. But Zone of Interest, on the other hand, has not been looking good so far throughout critic season. It's not showing up very well, so that makes me a little bit more reserved for it. So who knows? Maybe I do have Killers above Zone of Interest right now, but they're my 4 or they're my 5 and 6 at the moment. Killers just seems like this is an easy place to like take it out, but Zone is not hitting very well so far. So maybe Zone is just director an international feature.
To be fair, we've only had 4 days worth of critic awards. It has plenty of time to run, especially after it hits theaters, because the word on the street is they're not sending out many screeners for Zone of Interest.
It's just New York film critics. It played at New York Film Festival, so like hitting there should have. So now we move over to my side doing best editing and sound, because I think it's a little bit easier if the same person does both of these because of how much overlap both of these categories have. So I'll start off with best editing. And number 1, we already know what it is. It's Oppenheimer. It is the sweeper of this award season in terms of the editing category. Barbie, say what you want about the movie. This movie is very well edited. It's so impressive the way they're doing it, cross-cutting as well as going from reality into Barbie world, the dance scenes that you talked about. There's so much impressive stuff. Plus, it's a comedy, as you talked about in many episodes in the past. Comedies usually take at least 2, if not more, slots in this category. Then at number 3, I have Poor Things. And, you know, I've been saying all season long, Poor Things, strong, 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 all the way back since like January. I'm starting to think Poor Things may not be as strong as it may seem. It's still going to be a Best Picture nominee, but is it really top 2?
It's also suffering with critics groups right now.
That as well. So maybe it could drop down the lines and edit a little bit. I'm keeping it here. I think that it will perform as it needs to, but I no longer have it in my top 2. It's now more in that 3 to 5 type range in Best Picture. And here's where I think the category gets a little bit interesting. I think you have, again, just like our last category, cinematography, 3 movies, 2 spots. Where do you go? Currently, I have American Fiction in The Color Purple. And if you look historically, if a movie is a musical and it's doing very well, it's in this category. Therefore, I have Color Purple in here. However, if it is just as people were saying, it's number 9, it's number 10 in the category, then yeah, maybe it misses here. I think it's a little bit higher than number 9, number 10.
Question. Could the fact that Barbie is already in the category with song and dance sequences, it's not a musical, but it has musical elements. Could that make it so that they don't need to nominate The Color Purple because they already have their bases covered with that sort of big, showy song and dance movie?
That is fair. And I don't know, maybe they can't coexist, but until we see, I would say, major awards,
Mhm.
top of the line awards like Golden Globe, like BAFTA, not nominate Color Purple, where they do nominate Barbie, I'm gonna have them both in here. But
Yeah,
like for example,
it's
Globes, they're like in a week. If Color Purple doesn't show up in their editing category, then yeah, I'd probably move it out here.
it's less that they can't coexist and more just like, do they need to do The Color Purple? Because honestly, I think The Color Purple is very strong. I don't have it in editing just because like I don't have room for it. There's so many. I mean, you see below your 5 slot, there's so many movies that should be in any year nominated, but this
Mhm.
year's just so strong. So I just personally can't justify Color Purple being there.
And honestly, if I was going to take out a movie, it would probably be American Fiction more than Color Purple. If I was going to put in something that's up
Really?
below the line,
Woo!
like a Killers of the Flower Moon, which you probably look at this like, Dylan, why don't you have Killers of the Flower Moon? You have it missing editing, you have it missing cinematography. Well, first, I should say I would be the most biased in the world for Killers of the Flower Moon. It's on my film ball team. I want those points. I'm so happy it won New York Film Critics Circle, even if I don't agree with the win. But yeah, editing, it's a 3.5 hour movie. Like, oh, but The Irishman made it in. Wolf of Wall Street didn't. And I feel like Irishman was kind of the makeup nomination for that. Killers, maybe it is still top three, top four. I personally don't believe that it is at the moment. I think Oppenheimer, I think Barbie, I think American Fiction, and I think Poor Things would all be ahead of it, no questions asked. And then that's when you start having those debates about, okay, is Killers 5? Is it 6? Is it 7? Sort of thing. I know that's crazy to think about when it's the new Marty movie. It's from Apple. It just won New York Film Critics Circle, but to me, it doesn't really have a shot to actually win the Best Picture prize. And it's 3.5 hours long. People may look at that like, I know Avatar wasn't a huge movie last year, but they didn't nominate Avatar where it was in Best Picture and hitting some of those tech nominations. So a little bit below that, we have the holdovers. I don't really buy this if we have American Fiction, if we have Barbie, if we have Poor Things above it. We're not getting 4 comedy nominations. And then we have Maestro, which would be very much kind of like a tar from last year, but I don't buy Maestro being that strong either. I think this is a bottom half of our Best Picture. And I think to be solidly in editing, unless you're being overtly flashy, you need to be top 5. At the moment, maybe Ferrari can make a resurgence, but I just feel like the buzz, like you said, the buzz is dead for Napoleon. I think Ferrari, outside of Penelope Cruz, is completely dead across the board.
I completely agree with you on that. Now, the thing with Killers of the Flower Moon, we have to look back to The Irishman, which did get the editing nomination and was just as long. However, the argument, I guess, against Killers of the Flower Moon versus where The Irishman was still like a top 3 contender
Mm-hmm.
when nominations were announced. Can Killers of the Flower Moon miss some stuff? Because I feel like we can all acknowledge at this point, Killers of the Flower Moon is not really a win competitive film in many categories. You know, Lily Gladstone and then really not much else. Some people might still be thinking maybe Marty can win, but I feel like, you know, you're in Delulu land if that's what you're thinking right now.
That moves us over to the other category here, best sound. And if I have Oppenheimer winning editing, you best believe I have it winning sound as well. But here's where the
Locked.
category gets fun. Number 2, Color Purple. No questions
What?
about it. Yes,
Bro,
music movie, it's getting in. You can look to any other musical that is strong in the race or a music related movie like an Elvis, and they get this nomination. Again, if Color Purple is like number 9, number 10, maybe it misses, but I am hard on Color Purple is either 6 or 7 at the moment.
I'd say move it down just a little bit because it's not doing anything creative with the sound. It's all studio recordings of these songs.
I just think if we had 2 categories, this would get in both, which I think firmly puts it at number 2. Because at my number 3, I have Kills of the Flower Moon, another movie I think that would be in both if we still had 2 sound categories. We said this all season long. Think about Power of the Dog. That got in. Kills of the Flower Moon is that and more with the gunshots, with all the extra noises that you get throughout. And here's where we will disagree because I have Napoleon at my number 4 here. Cannons
And
go
I've
boom.
guess what I have in place of that? It's another dead film.
Ferrari, vroom, vroom.
Vroom vroom. I do have
Vroom,
Ferrari
vroom.
there over
Remember the time when I
Napoleon.
had Ferrari and Napoleon in sound? What a great time that was.
I don't see as much of an argument for Napoleon, but I do see one for Ferrari. So I'll let. What's your argument for Napoleon?
I mean, I think it's going to be the more widely seen movie over Ferrari. I think that's going to be the more widely liked movie over Ferrari. I think it's probably going to be doing more because we've already heard from critics that Ferrari has bad sound mixing. There's scenes where the
Really?
audio
I haven't
comes
heard
in
that.
and it comes in muffled. The score is overpowering the words. And Napoleon, say what you want about the movie, the tech elements of this are on top. They are supreme. The sound is maybe the highlight of all of those technical elements because the cannons are so immersive, the horses, the shouting, the whole groups of people, the fire. There's so much stuff that comes into the sound work of Napoleon where I think as long as people are seeing the movie, which I don't think so, because there's this whole debate of like, oh, movies flop. Napoleon's still going to be widely more seen than like half the other movies in the race. Like people are like, oh, the
It
creator
also
flopped.
I don't see how people can say Napoleon flopped and Killers of the Flower Moon was a huge success, other than to just like boost a movie that they like and
Yeah, because
degrade a movie they didn't, because Napoleon did pretty much just as
because
well
it's
as
the
Killers
whole
of the Flower
argument that people do throughout the year. I'm not like calling people out, but like, oh, Elemental flop. Elemental is probably the most seen movie in like any category besides Spider-Verse that it's in.
Moon.
The Creator flop. Creator still had more eyes on it than like something like The Killer. Yeah, The Killer did well on Netflix, but box office money is more equivalent to actual views and a Netflix
Yeah.
view count is.
It's people being nitpicking and biased. We win. Bye bye.
Don't feel good about this after the last week, but as you mentioned, it's still
Yeah.
early into the critics' race. The zone of interest. If I had this in picture, I need this to have some other sort of nomination than just director. Because like Triangle of Sadness still got a screenplay in. Some of these other movies throughout time that are just like the international slot still pick up other stuff than just one other category. And I think Zone of Interest needs something. Is that cinematography? Is that sound? I'm not counting international feature because that's a given. So like,
It's
is
a
it
given.
sound? Is it cinematography? Is it editing? Is it adaptive screenplay? I feel the best about sound, but still there's other contenders here. Maestro's here. Tar missed, but Maestro could find its way in. I think last year was a little bit tougher in this category than this year's. I think sound this year's kind of weak. Ferrari's here, which typically, if this movie was more well regarded, could get in. Maybe I'm just being nitpicky as well with Ferrari sound that I just heard from people that I go out and seek their opinions of, whether it's on YouTube, if it's on podcasts, if it's from Letterboxd reviews. I've just seen on multiple occasions sound work in Ferrari has been an issue, more of the mixing than the editing part. And then we have at number 9, which I think could be a shocker of a nomination, is The Creator. I can almost assure that this will make the short list. The question is,
Yes.
does it make the 5? If you have this winning visual effects, the track record would say you need this in the 5, but I think that The Creator could just be a Jungle Book Part 2, where it's just so
Yep.
impressive and it's one element. It doesn't really need another nomination to bolster it up. However, getting this nomination here would show like, yeah, this is winning visual effects, not Oppenheimer. And at number 10, no shot of a nomination, but as you have mentioned in a previous episode, Marvel always has one in the short list, and that will be
They
Guardians of
do.
the Galaxy Volume 3.
That said, if there's any year that they won't have anything in the shortlist, it is the year that they flopped harder than any other year. So, but Guardians of the Galaxy had good enough reviews that it should be in the shortlist for best sound. So let's move over. I will do double categories now. I got best costume design, best production design, baby.
Ooh, the Barbie
And
categories.
in the Barbie categories, absolutely. The Barbie Poor Things Supremacy categories. So let's start with costume design. Barbie wins. Barbie wins. Nothing else wins. Barbie wins. Undeniable. It is Barbie. It is the Barbie category. This is, if there's any award that's locked, it's best sound for Oppenheimer. If there's a second category that's locked, it's best costume design for Barbie. In the Barbie for your consideration package, they're sending out to awards voters, they're sending out the I Am Knuff sweater. And when you're sending out costume pieces from the movie, goddamn, man, like that, you're putting the costumes forward as the thing to vote for. So there you go. I really think Barbie just has it in the bag. But if it doesn't, it's Poor Things, but Barbie does. Poor Things also has gorgeous costumes. The dresses are amazing. It's stunning work, and it's creative work because it feels relevant to the time period, but also fantastical in a way. Like you're being taken to this mystical world, but it has all of the beauty of our own world and the creativity of it's amazing work in Poor Things. And if we're talking about the real world, we have to talk about Killers of the Flower Moon, which recreated the traditional dress of the Osage tribe in a very painstakingly detailed way. The attention to detail in Killers of the Flower Moon is really stunning work. There's also the color purple, which we've both seen, and the costuming is off the charts. My lord, the dresses in this, the way that it moves from fantasy to reality, the way that Shug Avery dresses herself for her performances. There's just so much costuming in this. And also, keep in mind, the main character of this movie makes dresses and makes pants, and she's a tailor. That's what she ends up doing. She becomes a seamstress. So when you have costuming as a part of your plot, it kind of ends up being something that gets nominated. And then to round out my top five, I have Maestro. The main reason here is that I wasn't convinced before, but it is Mark Bridges who gets nominations when he has something in the race. And he won for Phantom Thread. And it seems as though with Maestro's beginning of their 4-year consideration campaign, they are pushing the costumes. They're sending out packets to voters of these are the costume designs. Here are the sketches that Mark Bridges did. And usually when we see people pushing their costumes that forward in their campaign, it ends up happening. Now, I haven't seen Maestro yet. I should be going on Tuesday. So maybe my opinion will change on this. But Dylan, what do you think of the costumes in Maestro?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a bad nomination, but when you look to what you have below here, I would much rather take almost any of these movies over Maestro. It would be very much like did Fablemans get in last year?
No.
But it'd be like if Fableman's got in with like it's good work, but it doesn't jump off the page to you, sort of thing. To me, I think this is just another example like Fableman's, where like it's from a costume design that normally gets in that we all think, oh yeah, it's gonna be in the race, and then at the end of the day, it's not really a factor because not to spoiler your next in line, but something like Priscilla, Napoleon, Wonka, at least from the trailers, and even
Right.
Asteroid City, all pop a little bit more or more eye catching than something like Maestro is.
And to be fair, Mark Bridges was also the costume designer on the Fablemans, and it's a very similar thing, I guess, where people just kind of presumed the Fablemans would get a costume design nomination because Mark Bridges and because they were going all out to demonstrate, oh, look at the detail that we had in the design elements of this. But it didn't get in the end. So maybe Maestro won't either. To be honest, I actually think that costume design is the hardest category that we have because there are 8 films that are all strong contenders for a nomination, and there's only 5 spots. Priscilla has gorgeous costume design. Kaylee Spaney is strongly in the race for Best Actress, which means we could get 2 nominations for Priscilla overall. And we know that they love those Elvis costumes. They did it last year for Elvis. Is that a plus or a minus for Priscilla, though, because they just did it?
That would be the weakness, I think, of Priscilla. I think the work on the Elvis character, those costumes are the weakest, where all the stuff for Priscilla very much shines through. I know that's the point of the movie, but some voters may be like, oh,
Yeah.
the Elvis stuff doesn't look as good as the one from last year. Let's not
But
nominate
that
it.
could also be the argument for why to nominate it, is because it gives a different take on the same stuff that they did last year. They're not just nominating Elvis stuff. They're nominating the dresses of Priscilla, the way that she was transformed by Elvis into his little bird in a cage. Then there's also Napoleon, which has so many costumes. I don't think it's the best costumes, but there are a lot of costumes. You are costuming for armies.
I think the argument for Napoleon would be more in I don't want to say prestige, but more in the royal sequences, especially when they're being when they get married, when Napoleon takes the crown. Those scenes, you are costuming hundreds of people in the background, and everyone is in like very high class royal get-ups, gowns, crowns, all of the flashing lights that you could say. I just think those scenes are what elevates it over something like All Quiet on the Western Front, where it's mainly just going to be the war sequences, then maybe some men in suits. Here, you get the war sequences from the period piece, but you're also getting typical like Victorian kings and queens type outfits, which are something that this category does go for throughout their history.
There's also Best Production Design, where Barbie is also going to win. For a while, I thought it would be Poor Things, and then I saw Poor Things and went, nope, it's Barbie. The thing with Barbie is that there's so many sets. There's so much going on. And yes, they do go into the real world for about 33% of the runtime, but Barbie Land is so iconic. It is so big, and the detail work in it is just so strong. Poor Things, the production design is also stunning. It is great work. However, what tends to happen in Poor Things is it gets stuck in one location for lengths of time in the film, And that means we're not exploring as many locations as we are in Barbie. Barbie just is constant. It's just location after location after location, stunning sets over and over and over. Poor Things has like 4 or 5 amazing sets. But at the same time, it's not as iconic work. There's also the dual We Built a Whole Town movies, aka Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer. And the detail work that they put into both of these towns, I think that they're both just in. I could see one of them miss in this category. I could see one of them miss, but at least one of the two of them will be there. And I think it's safest at this point to just say both will make it in, because not only are they some of the biggest movies of the year, they're also they come with great narratives for how they built the set. And then at number 5, I'm giving it to The Color Purple. There is a lot of great production design work, and we actually during the film see some of the sets being built. Specifically, there's this great bar on a swamp, which one of the sequences of the movie is the building of the bar. It's pretty cool. There's some good work here, and I always think, musicals, you say they get into editing. I say musicals get into production design. So there we go. I got that here. It's a weak number 5 because following it up, there's the potential of The Zone of Interest. Maybe a little bit weaker after this week, after we've seen critics groups are not embracing it overwhelmingly. Zone of Interest might be dropping a little bit. But that said, the production design is a character in this movie. As much as the sound is, production design is an overwhelming, we always are surrounded by this wall and these blank, very lifeless, sterile rooms. It's really strong work. It's minimalist, but it's strong. There's also Wonka, which you always got to consider a Willy Wonka movie in production design. No, they have not made it in the past, but they always have a lot of big work, a lot of there's a lot of elements coming together, and the way that they use food in the world, I don't know. I feel like Wonka, one day, a Willy Wonka movie will get a production design nomination. And this is kind of where I think the chances for this category end. I have Napoleon. I don't know. I don't really see a huge argument for Napoleon making it in here. So maybe you could give me an argument, Dylan.
I think this is one of the categories where it is a little bit weaker in. But one thing I would like to point out is you say Napoleon's dead, but it's always in your 10. So to me, that's not completely dead. I think that Wonka has a great shot here. I was pretty high on Color Purple across the board. I think production design is one of its weaker elements. I do agree it has a great case here. But if that's another movie like Killers of the Flower Moon, can't hit every nomination, I feel like production design may be one of those where you could sub out. It's just, like you mentioned, it's the opposite of costumes here. This category is a little bit weaker. Where do we plug in that 5th movie? Is it Color Purple? Is it Zone? Is it Wonka? Maybe even Napoleon?
There's also Maestro and Saltburn as very, very low tier contenders. But again, I haven't seen Maestro. I have seen Saltburn. And the argument against Saltburn is, yes, it's a glorious, massive house. But how much of it were they designing and how much of it was just there when they walked in?
And moving from one category where stuff is pretty open to a category where I think stuff is pretty down packed is best makeup and hairstyling, I think we have a pretty solid top 4. That order will very much vary. It's by a lot of different people. But Poor Things, Maestro, Barbie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I think these all are very, very strong. Yes, you may be like, oh, Barbie's not much makeup. It's a lot more hair. Poor Things, maybe it's too weird, but like Maestro, Guardians, they're locked in. Like I said before, take your pick of the order. I currently have Poor Things at 1, call it Cope, call it Hope. I just don't want to buy into Maestro winning any awards. So I have Poor Things at my number 1, the work on Defoe. Just looks so impressive in the trailer. And we'll see once we get to some more of these early precursors. Does Poor Things actually have a real shot, or is it just Maestro? All year long, I said, not Maestro. They're not doing this again. They're going to show, hey, we have some flavor in the makeup and hairstyling department, something that they've never shown before. I had Dune Part 2 winning this until its delay, and then I moved Poor Things up to number 1. So I'm going to stay with Poor Things, but the first sign I see of Maestro winning a major award, I will jump ship. Barbie, Guardians, I've made my cases in many other videos, but here again, Barbie, I think, is just some of the most impressive hair. I think you can get at least one nomination solely on hair. And Guardians is doing a lot of work. If they campaign it, I don't see how it misses. And then this is where the category gets fun. Number 5, once again, Golda's got that cake. Helen Mirren is caked up, and she might make her way in. I want to take some swings. I want to be a little bit different. Most people out there will have something like Color Purple, like Oppenheimer, like Napoleon. To me, none of those seem that strong in this category. While they do seem shortlist worthy, they don't seem nomination worthy. And that brings me something like Priscilla, which I think they're doing great work. I just think it's very minimal work. And we're not going to get 2 hairstyling only nominations into this category. Naiad would be a great shout, but I currently don't have Benning in my 5. I don't have Foster in my 5. So would this be a lone makeup and hairstyling movie? That feels weird to be a lone makeup and hairstyling movie. What doesn't feel weird to be a lone makeup and hairstyling movie is the movie that the whole thing's about the makeup, and that is with Golda. Call me crazy, this may not even get shortlisted, but I want to take some swings, and this will be a swing in this category.
Hey, it's worth taking a swing. I want to comment on your Poor Things versus Maestro. I want to believe Poor Things can win. The work on Willem Dafoe, there's no way what they did with Bradley Cooper is better than what they did with Dafoe. And not only turning Willem Dafoe into a Frankenstein's monster-esque looking character with the scars and the face that feels like it's almost falling off of him. There's all these surgery scenes. We see exposed corpses, brains spilling out. I mean, maybe that's a knock against it winning because it's kind of gross at times. For that to be losing to yet another biopic where they turned a big actor into someone else with a prosthetic, like, God.
And at
But at the
least to
same
me,
time, everyone who's seeing Maestro is saying it's locked for a win, except you. You're the only person I've heard say that, Maestro is not winning after they've seen it. I haven't seen Maestro yet. I see it again on Tuesday. So I don't know if maybe I'll change my tune and say, oh, Maestro's got to win.
at least to me, like for Maestro, you're only rewarding the nose. There's not much other makeup work throughout. And yeah, you can make the case the whale last year was just the fat suit. But I don't know. To me, just if Maestro wins makeup, there's no world where Cooper doesn't win actor. And I don't have Cooper at my number 1 for actor. So maybe whenever
See, but I do.
cope, I will cope in both categories. It's just like I just don't buy Cooper. Like I get what a lot of other pundits are saying and critics are just saying like, oh, it's his time, he's doing a lot, but to me it just doesn't come off well. Like I think he's being outshined by his co-star, and to me at least, I know it's happened in the past, but like to me, when you're being that much outshined by your co-star and you win and they don't, just rubs the wrong way.
So let's move to our final below the line category because we did score and song in a previous video. You can find that in last week or the week before's predictions. So we're going to our last category of the day, that is best visual effects. I got the creator at number 1. It feels like the only really big visual effects driven movie of the year. And to me, the budget that they did it with, all of that's going to form a really strong narrative. However, I am breaking on Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
I am so upset about this. Just as I was so upset about Top Gun being a nominee last year, I have found that I just really hate when films use in their marketing campaign, we had no visual effects. We did it all for real. There was no VFX in this movie. We're the real deal. And then Oscar season comes around and they're like, actually, we lied in our marketing and it was all visual effects. I hate that. I hate it so much. Like, you are literally, as a marketing campaign, degrading the work that your visual effects team did. And that's what Oppenheimer was doing the entire time. Them saying, oh, we didn't use any visual effects. And then it's like, oh, actually, here's all the visual effects breakdowns. This would be one of the worst visual effects nominees of all time, in my opinion. And I get that people love this movie. That's fine. I think it's a very good movie. It would be an insult to the visual effects branch. Sorry, I'm very passionate anti-Oppenheimer visual effects. It's I hate that I have it at number 2, but I have to. It's the way things are going right now. I have to have it here, and I'm not happy with it. I'm so mad. And the fact that there's even a chance that it beats the creator is ridiculous. And to be fair, I am also a big proponent of, I think practical effects are so important. I love when things get nominated for practical effects. In fact, that's largely why I want to see Dungeons and Dragons get nominated here, which I have at my number 4 slot. The integration of practical effects with the digital effects is just so creative. But practical effects are so much more than we made one bomb. There's one bomb.
Ooh.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is my 3rd spot, and that's because there's great motion capture work, but there's also great integration of the practical effects. There's a lot of really cool practicals going on here, as well as those digital animals. But really, the argument for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is Rocket and his friends. That's the argument. That's what we're going with. That's why it is my number 3. Also because Marvel gets a visual effects nomination every single year without fail, and it will again here. Dungeons and Dragons, I already talked about it. It's the meshing of styles. So, number 5, Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. LOL. This is getting a qualifying theatrical run. It is, I mean, Zack Snyder's never gotten a visual effects nomination, but he's bound to someday. So, why not Rebel Moon? Why not
Yeah.
Rebel Moon, Dylan? Why do you think? Why not?
Well, I still believe that Disney is getting one of their Indiana Jones' Little Mermaids in because it is impressive work. It's just work that people really don't care about. And I just feel like if they campaign, one of these two will get in. Will be the de-aging, will be the underwater work. You can be like, oh, it looks so bad in The Little Mermaid. Well, Lion King got in. A lot of these other
The Lion King was $1
adaptations.
billion movie.
It was, but I don't think that really matters in this category because they constantly show that they will not make movies that no one has seen into the category, like
Yeah,
the 2020 year and some other years. But there's always just one like weird nomination. Maybe that's Dungeons and Dragons, a movie that
but
pretty
usually
much
those weren't films that were expected to be massive blockbusters. Like The Creator can sneak by as a flop because it wasn't expected to be this massive hit.
maybe.
Whereas, Indiana Jones, Little Mermaid, those should have been massive. And they have the stink of, ooh, those really flopped.
I don't think this branch really cares. I think it depends on what movies make the shortlist and what their Bake Off thing is. Because I could see a world where Indiana Jones' Bake Off is the best thing in the world. They show how they de-age Harrison Ford and how they made it look so photorealistic. Yeah, they may not show the audio of him talking, but they may show the visuals and like, look at what we did. That's good enough to get itself in. Or on the flip side, something like, I don't know, Oppenheimer. Its Bake Off is really bad and maybe it doesn't find its way. And I'm not predicting that, but there's that world sort of thing. I also still believe that Napoleon has a great shot to get in this category. There's a lot
Yeah,
of
I
stuff
do
going
too.
on in this movie, and I think that that would very much bolster up its chances in other categories like sound, like costume I talked about before. But I do believe there is a good shot for Dungeons and Dragons to get in here. I currently have Creator, Oppenheimer, Guardians, Napoleon in my 5th slot. I'm still kind of open between Indie and Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay. Okay. I'd say go with Dungeons and Dragons. It's a fun one. It's a
It
fun
is a fun one.
nomination. So if it's not any of those, I could see them just go with Poor Things, which is a movie that they will love. And yeah, there's actually quite a bit of visual effects in the movie. People have kind of lied and said that there's really nothing, but I mean, there's plenty of little gags with there's animals that have been cut in half
Mhm.
and sewn together, so you get like a duck dog or a like a pig chicken, and that type of stuff could lead to the nomination. And the use of digital sets like they do in The Mandalorian, that could really push Poor Things' chances in this category. Then there's Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I don't really think it's happening, but I mean, stranger things have happened. Who knows? There's also Godzilla -1, which is a current cultural phenomenon. People are going to see Godzilla like crazy. Maybe, just maybe, that could be enough to get it that visual effects nomination. And of course, last and least, Wonka. Those visual effects, no matter how good the movie is, those visual effects be looking wonky. So,
Wonky
uh,
Wonka. Wow,
Wonky
good.
Wonka. I
Good use
am
of
not
words.
expecting Wonka to get in, but it could get shortlisted, kind of similar to how Mary Poppins Returns did a few years ago. But Mary Poppins Returns had the element of that animated sequence, which could have been what boosted its chances. And Wonka just kind of has Hugh Grant as New Loompa.
you know, I'll hold out my judgment. Like you said, the early reviews of this movie was a dumpster fire, and the embargo recently lifted for social reactions, and people seem to be loving it. So I hope that it's a lot better than what some of the trailers may lead us to believe. But if you
I
did it
like
this
the
far
trailers
in the video, make sure to click down below to our Discord. You'll want to join that. Matt is Scene Maestro by the time this video is out. You can hear his very first reactions, as well as I will be rewatching Color Purple and hopefully seeing some other big movies this week as well. But until next time, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this has been Fantasy Filmball.